Buenas Nuevas is dedicated to the memory of Michael Caine, who brought meaning and joy to those who knew him. Iconostar Productions, in cooperation with Actors for Change, presents
Tall as a mountain, and my hopes can reach to the sky. And my strength is my desire, and my dreams can help me fly. And the twistings of each road I'm on make me open up my eyes. Joy and sorrow are awaiting me at each turn as they arise.
Each Turn by Bill Olson, starring John Townsend as Jeff Adams. Also starring Marc Paez, Tom Davis, and Ruth Wendell. Episode 9, Buenas Nuevas.
Extras casting.
Hi, I'd like to be an extra in Autumn Death.
What's your name?
Jeff Adams.
What kind of experience do you have?
Well, I'm an independent filmmaker, and I was an extra in an Italian horror movie, Trauma, and Beyond the Limit with Michael Caine in Mexico in 1982.
Beyond the Limit? I know a lot of people who worked on that picture.
Really?
How'd you find yourself in a British movie in Mexico?
I was studying at the University of the Americas east of Mexico City between Cholula and Puebla. Anyway, I was walking in downtown Puebla through the outdoor market when I ran into my friend Paul. Hey, Paul, you want to hear something funny?
From you, Jeff? Now that is a laugh.
I'm trying to entertain you.
Oh, but I am entertained.
I haven't even said anything yet.
Quite the contrary. You've said too much.
Well, now I'm getting mad.
Just recognize success.
Right now, success would be finding out why you think I can't be funny.
Because you've chosen to be unfunny.
Well, today I'm choosing to be funny, and you're just laughing at me.
You always bring bad news, don't you know that?
I just want to share the news I get in English on my shortwave radio.
You just want to show off, but all you do is turn people's stomachs. This war starts, that actor dies, terrorist bombings, assassinations, floods, fire and brimstone. We groan the minute you walk into a room.
I didn't know that, Paul. I was just reporting the news from the radio.
Report the good news. Las Buenas Nuevas.
But it's boring.
Poor Jeff. You're so eager to make friends, and we don't make it easy for you.
Perhaps you can give me advice.
Well, first, forget about bad news. We can't fix it, so let it go.
What about good political news?
Let it go. One person's good political news is another's bad news. We don't all share your values.
You do.
I do, but I don't really care what the president back home is doing, or the Congress.
How about the president here? I get Mexican news in English, too.
Let it go. The Mexican Constitution forbids foreigners from meddling in their internal politics, and that's just fine with me. I like forgetting about politics. Fewer arguments, fewer worries. And, well, without politics, there's automatically less bad news right there anyway.
So, Paul, what do we talk about?
You see those clouds?
Yeah.
See the volcanoes over there?
Yeah.
Remember the field behind the Phi Ed building at school?
Yeah.
Have you ever walked out there through the tall grasses with their fuzzy tops?
Yeah.
Don't you think they're pretty?
Yeah, and have you ever noticed those little reptilian creatures by the student union? They lay in the sun on the sidewalk, and when you try to get close, they scurry into the bushes.
That's right. And how about the ducks by the pond?
They're so cute.
Cute! They're beautiful, like fresh January snow.
One was following me around the other day.
What do you mean?
Everywhere I went, it followed. If I went left, it went left. If I went right, it went right. If I sat down, it stayed put. I named it Margarita and wrote a paper about her for Spanish class. The professor liked it so much, she read it to all her friends.
How about that? Now look, Jeff, we're talking. Being a little bit positive got you a new friend already. What do you think of that?
I think I'll forget about listening to the news, the bad news, on my short wave. A few days later, Thanksgiving rolled around. Being an American holiday, it's not celebrated in Mexico. So I decided to make a vacation for myself in Veracruz, on the Gulf Coast, hoping to acquire some good news, or Buenas Nuevas. So I boarded a bus in Puebla and headed east on roads winding up and around steep hills. I feared we'd go flying over the edge, turning over, everyone dying horribly. But instead, when we'd reached the top, I could see the vast countryside, and I was so enamored with the lush and beautiful green and rolling hills that I decided against taking photos of it. How could photos ever hope to do justice to such beauty? Staying at the Hotel Emporio in Veracruz was a good choice because one morning I found myself in the elevator with a plump Mexican guy wearing a dirty old green t-shirt.
Buenos dias.
Buenos dias.
¿Eres de Norte America?
Sí.
I speak English. Call me Fernando.
Nice to meet you, Fernando. I'm Jeff Adams. I'm a student at La Universidad de las Americas.
Ah, in Cholula.
Actually, it's just outside Cholula in the country.
Well, I'm working on a motion picture here.
Really? I want to be a director one day.
Well, I'm casting extras, but they're meeting down in the lobby. Would you like to be an extra? You'll get to meet Richard Gere and Michael Caine. We're shooting a British movie.
Wow, that'd be great.
We're taking everyone on a bus up to the cemetery. We're doing a funeral scene, so do you have a dark suit?
Well, no, I packed rather light for the trip from Puebla, but I have a dark blue short-sleeved shirt and a white tie.
That'll be fine.
You're sure?
Well, certainly.
Needless to say, I ate, changed, and was in the lobby at work 9 with my short-sleeved blue shirt and white tie and camera. When I saw all the people in black sitting around, I really felt out of place. I must confess that when I first heard we were going to take a bus to a cemetery, I wondered if this movie was going to be about burying gringos. I had visualized myself being murdered and buried by a band of Mexican extras while being photographed by a British film crew. So, before boarding the bus, I asked Fernando, "What scene will we be filming?"
Richard Gere's funeral. He plays a British doctor killed by terrorists.
Really? What's the movie called?
The Honorary Consul. It's based on a novel by Graham Greene.
I kept thinking of how happy Paul would be. At last I would have some Buenas Nuevas, good news. The cemetery was beautiful, with old white stones and built with terraces climbing a hillside. It was funny to look up and see a casket draped with the British flag in Mexico. Outside the fence was a dirt road. We stood in the hot sun, surrounded by vans, cars, and motorhomes as we waited for directions. Melvin was the second assistant director. I never saw him smile all day. When I first saw him, he was angry about a middle-aged woman who'd appeared out of nowhere, dressed in formal black attire.
She says she was just passing by.
Just passing by and she's dressed like that? Tell her to go away, Fernando.
You? Why are you dressed like that? Who told you to wear a white tie?
Huh?
This is supposed to be a funeral, not of whatever event you might wear a white tie to. I've got to get you out of those clothes.
Oh.
Juanita, get me the gray suit of the CIA man. You know which one I mean? That's it. Thank you. Here.
Huh?
What's your name?
Jeff Adams.
Take this suit and that trailer, Jeff, and change.
Change? Why does he have to change?
Well, look at him, Melvin. Don't look at us arguing, Jeff. Go and change.
Yes, ma'am.
We're already behind schedule, and we have a real funeral showing up here at 5 o'clock.
Well, don't yell at me about it. I caught him as soon as I could. Why do you have extras showing up who aren't dressed right?
Fernando! Where the hell is he?
Use your walkie-talkie.
The batteries are dead. Someone's supposed to get me new ones. God, I hate this job.
The trailer was divided into little sections. I went into one and began taking off my pants. Then it hit me. My clothes might get stolen. Well, I couldn't let that happen. So I kept my own clothes on and put the gray suit of the CIA man over them. This would be very hot, but I couldn't let my clothes get stolen. Unfortunately, my own pants legs were longer than the costume pants legs, meaning that my own pants legs kept falling down and revealing themselves. Well, that's something no CIA agent should leave home without, an extra set of clothes. Actually, European movies must have a problem with small pants. Years later, I was an extra in the Italian horror film Trauma, and those pants were too tight. At one point, the costume designer, another woman, took me into a back room and literally stripped the pants right off me. That's the only time since I was a small child that a woman, for any reason, took my pants off of me. Woe is me.
You look very professional.
Thanks. Now, if I can get this necktie tied... What's your name?
Milton.
I'm Jeff Adams. I'm a student at la Universidad de las Américas.
Ah, la urla, cerca de Cholula.
Sí, es muy bonito allá.
Sí, claro. You are from the United States.
Yes, from Eau Claire, Wisconsin. It's kind of between Chicago and Canada.
Ah, yes. I have a cousin who lives in Chicago. I'd like to go there myself someday to get a good job.
Good luck.
Oh, my God. What the hell is this? Why are you wearing your pants on under the costume, huh? Why?
I couldn't stand there in front of her and the Mexican extras and say I was afraid my clothes would get stolen. I didn't want to hurt the feelings of the Mexicans. I also felt Barbara might have a certain pride in the security of her costume trailer, so I stood silently, dying inside as she kneeled down and began to fix my costume, tucking in the dark blue pants so only the gray ones remained. I felt like a child being scolded by his mother before Uncle Richard's funeral. Richard from the gear side of the family.
Why did you have to wear them underneath? Are you afraid my clothes are dirty? They're clean, you know.
I know.
Get your tie done.
I can't tie a necktie if it's not a clip-on.
Oh, have a man do it.
I'll tie it for you, Jeff.
Thank you, Milton.
We're going to shoot now. Please, Fernando, have them take their places.
Marvin, what's taking so long with those extras? We have an actual funeral about ready to arrive.
They're on their way now, John.
Okay. Todos ustedes, venga para acá. Jeff, you'll need to stand below the hill with everyone. And look up to where they're shooting.
So much.
Don't move. Just look sad.
He owed me a lot of money.
Jeff, I've told the first assistant director that you want to direct movies one day. I'll take you up to meet him. His name is Simon.
Simon was quite different from Melvin. If the production was a storm, then Simon was the eye of that storm. He stood with the camera crew up the hill of the ancient cemetery. As Fernando led me up to him, Simon seemed to be smiling down on all of us, like God smiling upon Job, trusting everyone's abilities to do their jobs right, and knowing that all would be okay in the end. Simon gave me a little pep talk, then told me not to wear my camera during the shooting. He said it would not be something. He used a French word I didn't know, but the idea was that it wouldn't be very polite, very appropriate. So Fernando kept it in his glove compartment. Fernando had a nice sports car, and an even nicer wife tending it. Most of the day involved nothing more than standing around in the hot sun, but I finally got to see some filmmaking take place. I looked up the hill to the terrace with the British flag on the casket. Several featured actors stood there as a Mexican actor gave an elegy with fierceness in his voice. The poor doctor, played by Richard Gere, was killed by international terrorists. The elegy was a wake-up call. How could anyone support international terrorism, especially after that speech? It sent shivers up my spine. That speech reminds me of another discussion Paul and I had had at the university.
Ben Franklin wrote that life is an embryo state, that we're not really born until we die. He asked why we should grieve then, since death means a new baby has been born among immortals.
So, Paul, you're saying we shouldn't punish terrorists or other killers?
We shouldn't punish them if you truly believe what Ben Franklin said.
But that's ludicrous.
Well, I'm just pointing out that...
You're saying we should let murderers continue to kill.
I'm pointing out people's hypocrisy, Jeff.
Forget about hypocrisy. Think about the damage terrorists do.
Jeff, I'm talking about people who believe life is a cocoon, and that death means we've become a butterfly. How can a murderer be seen as evil by someone who believes the murderer pushed a person into a butterfly state?
I don't see death that way.
I'm just pointing out a common hypocrisy. The people who support capital punishment usually believe in life after death.
So you want them to go free?
No! I'm just pointing out the hypocrisy. I want to know why these people see murder as such a big deal. Well, it's a big deal to me. My point is not that death or murder are good, but that people can't seem to integrate their thoughts. They keep contradicting themselves. Okay, I gotcha. I agree totally. Back on the movie set, we finally had our lunch break, during which I walked to the top of the hill where the camera crew had moved to. One young English guy wore a USS John Kennedy deck cap. I asked how he'd gotten it, and he said he had shot a segment of 60 minutes aboard the American ship. He seemed detached from the whole experience, like he'd rather talk about something else. Years later, I would find that to be a common attitude among the typical film professional. Finally, a guy wearing shorts asked me,
"So, you want to direct films, do you?"
"Yeah, I do. Of course, I have no illusions about it. I suppose I'll never get the chance. You know, the real world and all." At the time, I thought that man might have been the director of photography. But after years of thinking about it, I'm certain it was John Mackenzie, the director. Since I was never very close to any of the shooting, I never got to see who was actually saying action. Later, as we were preparing to shoot a different scene, Barbara went around to check the costumes. She came up to me, and I stiffened nervously. She straightened my collar a little, then leaned over close to me and whispered in my ear,
I'm sorry for yelling at you earlier.
"That's okay. I understand things were pretty hectic." For the rest of the day, whenever she looked at me, she smiled. It was the warm kind of smile that seemed to say, "Thank you," as much as it said, "I'm sorry." I saw this tall man with big sunglasses and curly hair. He was kicking the sand and twirling this cane around in his hands. Well, anyone with a cane must be Michael Caine, so I moseyed over to him, trying to make it all look accidental. He had been standing all alone, probably as uncomfortable in the hot sun as I was. When I got close to him, I said, "It must be hard work to be an actor." He replied, "Yes, it's also a lot of waiting around." Then he walked away from me. Well, I wasn't angry, and I wasn't too hurt. I've become too good at rationalization to be hurt that easily. And I've rationalized about it for years. For instance, perhaps he's shy. Perhaps he's been bothered by strangers so often, many of them obnoxious, that he just doesn't want to deal with it anymore. Another explanation escaped me, though. Years later, Mr. Caine was a guest on Larry King Live. Larry said, "I suppose it's a lot of waiting around between takes." Michael began to answer, "Yes, it's—" Then he stopped himself. "Actually," he said, "I'm working very hard, trying to decide what I'm going to do in the next take." That was funny, because it almost felt as if he'd remembered his encounter with me, or with someone whose face he couldn't quite remember, and was trying to explain why he walked away in such an apparently rude manner. Remember, I said I had rationalized about why Michael Caine had walked away from me? Well, that reminds me of another chat Paul and I had. We were both psychology students, and were often given to discuss that subject. 100 years ago, Jeff, they used to beat up mental patients. Then counselors started putting people on guilt trips for normal reactions to pain like rationalization. Now they use statistics as a weapon. They say things like, 99% of people from families like yours are like this and that, and since you're telling me something different, you must be a liar. So, what I hear you saying, Paul, is that the history of counseling is a history of replacing one barbarism with another? Sort of. Only I'm trying to decide how much of it is barbarism and how much is laziness. I suppose counselors find it easier to read statistics than to really get to know their clients, so it's just copping out at best, and barbarism at worst. But it has to change, and that's my goal for a psychology career. What's your goal, Jeff? Just to earn money while I try to become a writer and a filmmaker.
Fernando, get that American in the gray suit. Make him stand with the chauffeurs by the end limousine. When Michael walks by, I don't want them to look at him. They're too busy talking. In fact, they're telling jokes. And Fernando, they're telling dirty jokes about dead people.
So I took my place, started telling dirty jokes in Spanish, and waited for the word action. I still waited. I heard nothing. Someone walked by, so I swung my head around to see who it was. Michael Caine limped by with his cane, fully in character. He got in his Jeep, drove 100 feet, got out, walked back to his starting place, twirling his cane like a baton while some guy backed the Jeep up to its starting place.
This happened about 4 times. Each time I looked. I had the horribly sick feeling that I had killed the entire funeral scene. After the shooting, Fernando and I ate dinner at the hotel. We BS'd and hammed it up, pretending to be English. He told me that he and his wife are in the restaurant scene in Under Fire. Gene Hackman is in there. Fernando comes in with his actual wife, and later he's escorted out just before a bomb goes off. He gets a close-up when they escort him out. When I finally got to see Under Fire, it was really funny because he looked different. He was a businessman in this bright white suit. Anyway, on my way back to Puebla, I wondered what my classmate Paul at the university would say about my ruining the cemetery scene of this multi-million-dollar movie. It was good to have friends, and a friend would be supportive. But I began to fear that my search for Buenas Nuevas, or good news, might be undermined if I told Paul the bad stuff, until I realized that the day was fun nevertheless. The next morning, I ate my breakfast in the school cafeteria, determined not to brag. Still, I was so excited about my adventure that I couldn't quite compose myself. When I noticed the other students not smiling as I told about the movie, I felt ashamed of myself. Perhaps I was only bragging. When I sat in the classroom, I pulled out my books and looked out the open door into the courtyard. Puebla gets much colder than tropical Veracruz this time of year. In December, the leaves even change color and fall off the trees. Mexican workers rake them up. Spring arrives days later, with beautiful young blades of green, tender and fragile, peeking through from buds. On the 2 volcanoes, the snow is bright and thick, though it always seemed to melt by mid-afternoon. I looked at another student who looked at me, not smiling. I wondered where Paul was. I was so anxious to tell him about the movie. Where's Paul?
Jeff, Paul is dead.
Class was put aside as everyone shared information about the events. Paul and his girlfriend had been swimming on the tropical island Isla Mujer. Paul had been caught by an undertow. His body hadn't yet been found and wouldn't be for another 2 days. I remembered the film set of the fun I'd had and how unimportant my mistakes that day now seemed. They had, after all, caused no one to die. 3 days later, the American students sat in a Catholic church in Cholula, listening to the priest. I understood only very little of what was said, but I seemed to remember every word as though it had been spoken in English. Somehow, being there with the others and with the local community made the world a little smaller, a little closer. When I finally saw the honorary consul, it had been retitled Beyond the Limit. I was disappointed to discover that the funeral scene had indeed been cut, but it seemed obvious that it was done to change the slant of the movie from being a political thriller to being a sex thriller. More importantly, I realized that I had been there and that it had been a very fun experience in which I got to laugh and meet wonderful people. If I had screwed up on the set, it was really insignificant after Paul's death. I learned that the most important thing is life itself. And thanks to Paul, I learned to find the good news, las buenas nuevas, which oftentimes is simply life itself. And that's my story about Beyond the Limit. So do I get to be an extra in Autumn Death?
Actually, I'm looking for someone who does less talking.
If
That's better. You get the part.
Each turn was produced, written, and directed by Bill Olson. The associate producer was John Townsend. Episode 9, Buenas Nuevas, starred John Townsend as Jeff Adams and Paul, Marc Paez as Fernando and Milton, Tom Davis as Melvin, John, the casting director, and the student, and Ruth Wendell as Barbara. The music was by John Wright. The theme was by Bill Olson and John Wright, and was sung by Robert Lilligren. Production assistance was by Chris Freeman. My name is Siobhan Parnicky. The producers wish to thank CTV Roseville and Cable Access St. Paul, both in Minnesota. All persons and situations in this radio drama are fictitious. Any similarities to actual persons, living or dead, is strictly coincidental. Each turn is copyrighted 1996 by Bill Olson. Buenas Nuevas is dedicated to the memory of Michael Caine, who brought meaning and joy